The tourist loudly mocked the guardsman, broke the rules, and felt like he was in control. But everything changed when he accidentally bumped into an elderly veteran. The guardsman broke protocol, and his actions left the crowd in awe, and the tourist regretting every word he'd said. London's grey morning fog had yet to lift, but a crowd of tourists had already gathered in front of Buckingham Palace. They chatted, snapped photos, and tried to get as close as possible to the royal guards. Standing at his post was Jonathan Ridley, a tall, imposing guardsman, the embodiment of tradition and honor. His red uniform, impeccably polished buttons, and majestic bearskin hat drew attention like a magnet. The guard stood motionless, like a statue, but of course, he saw everything. He was used to the crowd, the cameras, and even the foolish attempts to joke about his stoic demeanor. But today, something felt different. He could sense it in his bones. Among the crowd, one particularly persistent tourist stood out, a middle-aged man with a flushed face and a beer bottle in hand. His wrinkled Hawaiian shirt and loud voice disrupted the usual morning routine. "Hey, mate, give us a smile. We came here for some fun, right?" he shouted with an overconfident grin. The crowd chuckled awkwardly. Some encouraged him with cheers, while others shook their heads in disapproval. "Here we go again," the silent murmur of more informed spectators seemed to say. "They're real soldiers, not circus performers," an elderly woman in an elegant gray coat whispered, clutching her purse. But the tourist didn't care. He took a step closer, crossing an invisible line of respect. "These guards are just part of the attraction, bro. We're paying for this," he declared smugly, winking at his friends. The guard remained still, his gaze fixed straight ahead. But deep inside, he knew men like this one believed money entitled them to everything, even disrespecting tradition. Some onlookers pulled out their phones, anticipating that the video of the drunk tourist would soon go viral. Some found it amusing, others were annoyed, and some just embarrassed. Do they really think this is just a show? Nearby, children watched with a mix of curiosity and confusion. A young boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom, why is he yelling at the soldier?" But she had no answer. Words weren't enough for the tourist anymore. He reached out, his hand moving toward Jonathan's uniform. The crowd froze. This was it. The line had been crossed. "Who does that? This is just too much." And yet, the guard stood firm, as if carved from stone. Honor was not for sale. He had learned to endure the stares, the smiles, the taunts. But the tension in the air thickened. Something was about to happen. The tourist smugly turned to his friends and winked. "Look, he's not even moving. Maybe I should touch his hat too." At that moment, someone in the crowd whispered loudly, "Are you serious? They're real soldiers, not a joke." But the man only shrugged. He had already made up his mind. He was going to push the limits. The only question was how much longer until the inevitable response. The provocateur wasn't backing down. He swayed on his feet, clearly seeing the guard's patience as nothing more than an invitation for his next stunt. The crowd around him began to split into two camps. Some eagerly recorded the scene on their phones, anticipating viral content, while others cast irritated glances at the tourist, barely holding back their remarks. "Who does something like this? It's just too much," muttered an elderly woman in a hat, averting her gaze. But the man didn't care. He felt in control. After all, he was a tourist, which meant he had paid for his right to have fun. Money equals power, right? In his drunken mind, there were no boundaries between respect and entertainment. With a smug grin, he took another step forward, blatantly crossing the white line that served as a clear reminder. Do not pass. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and hushed voices filled the air. "Is he insane? That's the Royal Guard." The tourist just smirked and, winking at his friends, suddenly raised his hand, attempting to slap Jonathan on the shoulder. Snap! The sharp sound of the guard's boots echoed across the square. Jonathan stepped forward, and in an instant, like a thunderclap, his commanding voice boomed, "Step back!" The voice was so loud and authoritative that silence fell over the crowd. Laughter died immediately. The tourist's face stretched in shock, and his drunken bravado evaporated as quickly as warm beer on a cold day. Jonathan's eyes flashed with steel. His hand confidently rested on the grip of his rifle, sending an unmistakable message. "I am not here for your amusement." The tourist froze. This was no longer a game. A wave of discomfort washed over him, but he still tried to save face. "Whoa, mate. You serious?" He attempted a smile, but his voice wavered. The crowd watched intently. The amusement in their eyes had been replaced by anticipation. Would he dare take another foolish step? The woman in the hat whispered to the person beside her, "He's about to get a real lesson." The tourist's friend, standing behind him, tugged at his sleeve. "Come on, man, let's get out of here." But it was too late. The tourist had already become the center of attention, and now he had to choose: continue acting foolishly or retreat with whatever dignity he had left. With an awkward step back, he raised his hands in surrender and muttered under his breath, all right, relax. I was just joking." The guard didn't move. His face remained as impassive as when it all began. But deep inside, he knew this man had come dangerously close to crossing a line where jokes were no longer tolerated. The crowd stirred. Some clapped, while others threw sarcastic remarks. "Guess he thought tourists make the rules here. Yeah, right." Parents with children standing nearby finally sighed in relief. They looked at the guard with respect, realizing the level of restraint it took to remain composed. And the tourist? He quickly disappeared into the crowd, his confidence drained. Now he just looked foolish. Someone from his group whispered in his ear, "Dude, you're already trending on TikTok." Meanwhile, Jonathan resumed his post, his gaze once again fixed on the distance. But deep down he knew his shift was far from over. Honor and dignity are not for sale. At that very moment, an elderly woman in a wheelchair emerged from the crowd. Like a beacon of dignity amid the chaos, she stood out in her neat blue coat, carefully styled silver hair, and the gleaming military medals pinned proudly to her chest. A true hero, though no one seemed to notice her at first, too engrossed in the show with the tourist. But fate has a cruel and precise sense of humor. One of the loud tourist's friends, laughing and stepping backward carelessly, didn't see the woman and nearly toppled her over. "Watch out!" someone in the crowd shouted, but it was too late. The wheelchair jolted, and her scarf slipped from her shoulders, landing on the cold pavement. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Some raised their hands to their mouths in shock. And the tourists? They laughed. "Hey, Granny, need a hand, or got this on your own?" One of them smirked, oblivious to the hole he was digging for himself. And that's when the unexpected happened. Jonathan Ridley, the ever-motionless, stone-faced guardsman, suddenly stepped forward. The crowd fell silent. Every move he made was precise, deliberate, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Kneeling gracefully before the woman, he reached for her scarf and gently draped it back over her shoulders with the utmost care and respect. His face remained expressionless, but within that simple act lay everything: honor, dignity, and true nobility. No one doubted that this was more than just protocol. It was a silent pledge to the values he stood for, values that were too often forgotten in today's world. For a brief moment, time itself seemed to pause as everyone absorbed what they had just witnessed. And then the applause erupted. "A true officer!" someone shouted, and dozens of voices echoed in agreement. Even those who had been filming the tourists' antics now turned their cameras to Jonathan, realizing who the real hero of the moment was. And the tourist? He stood there, head down, his face flushing red for all to see. His bravado had melted away, vanishing as quickly as morning fog under the rising sun. Now he looked foolish and out of place, like a schoolboy caught misbehaving. "Let's just go," one of his friends mumbled, tugging him by the arm. Without sparing him a glance, Jonathan slowly straightened, stepped back, and resumed his position, standing tall and unshaken. A fleeting, almost imperceptible glance in the tourist's direction carried an unspoken message. "You made a mistake, and you won't forget it." The crowd was still clapping, but now with an entirely different energy. Some continued recording, but their focus had shifted. There was admiration in their eyes. Because in a world where it's so easy to lose one's honor, there are still those who preserve it. The video of the incident spread across social media faster than the tourist could grasp the gravity of his mistake. "This is what honor looks like. Learn how to behave in a foreign country. The Guardsman is an example to us all." Comments flooded in by the thousands. The clip was racking up millions of views, and with each new viewer, the world bore witness to how a man's arrogance crumbled in shame when faced with true dignity. The tourist, head hung low, tried to disappear into the crowd. But the condemning stares followed him everywhere, whether it was a group of elderly folks shaking their heads disapprovingly or young people smirking as he passed by. "So, where to now? Another city?" One of his friends sneered with a bitter chuckle. "Time to get out of here," the tourist mumbled quietly, finally realizing he had become the object of global ridicule. He was no longer the life of the party, but just another viral meme. His face now a subject of worldwide discussion. The crowd parted before him as if he were someone to be avoided. Meanwhile, Jonathan Ridley, having completed his shift, stepped away from his post with his usual calm composure. He adjusted his bearskin hat slightly and gave a respectful nod to the veteran sitting nearby. The elderly woman, clutching a neatly folded flag in her hands, gazed at him with gratitude, her eyes welling with tears, a look of someone who truly understood the weight of honor. The crowd erupted into applause once more. "A real officer! We could use more like him in every era," someone shouted, and cheers of agreement followed. The admiration was palpable. People weren't shy about showing their respect. Hearing this, the tourist hunched his shoulders and quickened his pace, wishing for nothing more than to disappear. "Will these tourists ever learn that not everything is for sale?" a local muttered sarcastically, recording the scene on their phone. Jonathan, paying no mind to the commotion, returned to his post. His stance remained firm, his gaze unwavering. He stood above it all, above fleeting scandals, above childish provocations. He understood one simple truth: honor is not just a word, it's an action. And as one tourist fled in disgrace, the Guardsman took his place once more, a timeless symbol of dignity standing tall in the face of changing generations and fleeting moments.